Welcome to Live Happy, Eat Dirty, a podcast full of quick and dirty health and diet ideas for real people, hosted by me, Kate Harrison. Keep listening for the latest weird and wonderful ideas and interviews from the worlds of psychology, nutrition and more. If you loathe detoxes and clean eating, but love evidence-based tips and eating well, you're in the right place. Because you can be slim without giving up cheese, you can be fit without ever trying a triathlon, and you can enjoy your life without having to be a saint. Ditch the guilt. A happy, dirty life is so much more fun. Here's today's show. Hello and welcome to today's podcast, where we will be hearing about kefir. But first of all, a little bit of an update. It's June as I record this. My favourite time of year probably for all the new fruit and veg that are coming in, seasonal, delicious and really great value. Of course, the best value of all are the berries that I'm picking from our garden. Some really good ones out there, including raspberries fresh from the cane. The dirtiest way to eat of all. I do check them for caterpillars and the like beforehand, but oh my word, they just pop with flavour. It would be a challenge not to eat dirty at this time of year. I can't believe it's now almost 3 months as well since the Dirty Diet was published, and thank you for all the feedback. It's still going down really well and we're having a great time in our group. Listen up for how you can join a bit later on. This time we're talking about one of my favourite ways to increase the diversity of your gut bacteria, and that's eating fermented foods, especially dairy and especially kefir. I've long been a fan of the very creamy live yogurts made by the Collective Dairy. Love their mango flavour, the lemon and the raspberry as well as the plain. They're here in the UK, and when I heard they were launching a brand new range of kefir, I wanted to know more about how and why they decided to do it. The interview also includes a really great explanation of why we need to be thinking about eating dirty and increasing the diversity in our diet to improve our health in a very sanitised world. I am delighted to welcome to today's podcast Ciaran Adam, who is Innovation Lead at the Collective, which is a dairy company which already makes some of my favourite yogurts, I have to say, and has now branched into kefir, which of course, if you've read the Dirty Diet book, you will know is one of my favourite things for doing great things for the gut. So Ciaran, can you start off by telling me a little bit about kefir and specifically dairy kefir and why you've decided to branch out into this area of the market?
Hi Kate, yeah, absolutely. So kefir is essentially a fermented milk drink packed full of live cultures. And it's been enjoyed around the world for thousands of years, starting off in the Caucasus Mountains in Eastern Europe, and from there spreading sort of throughout Russia, Eastern Europe, into Asia. It's really popular in America, and now it's starting to become popular in the UK as well. Kefir is very similar to yogurt in that they're both fermented milk products. And being made from milk, they're both sort of really nutritious as well, being sort of milk being a source of protein and calcium and various sort of B vitamins. But the real difference between yogurt and kefir is that yogurt is generally made by fermenting milk with sort of 2 or 3 different strains of bacteria, whereas our kefir is made by fermenting milk with 13 different strains of bacteria. And that diversity is really important and what sets kefir apart. The reason it's so important is, and this is something that your listeners will remember from sort of earlier editions of your podcast, but your large intestine is full of trillions of bacteria. So there's around 2 kilos of bacteria living in your gut. And there's a huge different range of types of bacteria. Some are good, some are not so good. But essentially, the good ones digest the food that we can't. So we have our diet, it goes in, it goes through our stomach, and then most of the nutrients are absorbed in our small intestine, and then when it gets to our large intestine, there's just the things that we can't digest on our own left. So these are largely sort of fibers and that kind of thing, from fruit and vegetables and all sorts of things. And the good bacteria in our gut essentially digest these fibers and turn them into things that we do need. So things like vitamins, like B vitamins, and fatty acids that our body uses to turn into hormones. But different bacteria metabolize different things. So it's quite important for us to have a good diversity in there. And by having a sort of diverse range of bacteria, you have a healthy gut, and that's what leads to some of the health benefits that you talk to your dietitian about. So things like having a stronger immune system, mental health, digestion. So yeah, that's the main difference. And whilst developing the kefir, I did a lot of research into gut health, especially gut health of people in the West, because it's actually quite an eye-opening story. So, and it really links into the sort of eat dirty diet, in that sort of tens of thousands of years ago, we were a nomadic species. We roamed the earth, hunting and gathering, eating various sort of tubers we pulled out the ground, and nuts and fruit and things like that. We were born into the dirt, and we had a really varied diet. And this varied diet was really important in feeding a really diverse microbiome, so all of the bacteria in the gut. But as time went on, the population of the planet sort of increased, and we had to start settling and sort of farming the land in order to feed mouths. And that was essentially the agricultural revolution. And that was, of course, brilliant for our civilization, but it meant that it led to a huge drop in the diversity of our diet, which has only kind of increased as time has gone on. And then about 150 years ago, a guy called Louis Pasteur established germ theory. So this was basically the theory that certain pathogens, so sort of some harmful bacteria and viruses, can cause disease, which is obviously an amazing discovery and led to sort of countless lives being saved. But it also meant that we started to be born into a sanitized world instead of a dirty world, where we're no longer sort of born into the dirt, but born into a very sterile environment. And just has led to us being exposed to much less bacteria. Then 100 years ago, the first antibiotic was invented, which again was a miracle of modern medicine, but has kind of been overused, some would say, in the modern day. So, every time you have an earache and you've taken a course of antibiotics, you're killing good and bad bacteria in your gut as well. And so what we're left with is kind of a shadow of the former self that was our gut. And so the best thing we can do is to obviously have a really diverse diet with lots of different fruit and vegetables and things, but also try and get a diverse range of bacteria in through eating fermented foods, so things like kefir.
That is an amazing overview of this whole world that actually, you're right, becomes increasingly fascinating the more you read about it. Listening to you talk particularly about how kefir has been used as part of the traditional diet across certainly large parts of Northern Europe and other areas. Of course, they had no idea that there were all these bacteria present. They weren't identifying it. They were just doing something that they enjoyed eating, that preserved the food, but also that I guess they knew from traditional wisdom gave them health benefits. When it then comes to transferring that into a modern foodstuff that you're producing on a big scale, how do you then work out, if you like, which different fermenting ingredients to use, which bacteria to introduce? Is it a mixture of modern science and that ancient wisdom? I'd love to know how you did that.
Traditionally, how it's made and how some of your listeners might make it at home is using what's called kefir grains. And these are a type of SCOBY. And a SCOBY is a symbiotic colony of bacteria and yeast. So it's essentially a range of different yeast and bacteria strains living together in this kind of white cauliflower looking lodge thing. And what you do is you take the grains and put them into milk, and some of the yeast and bacteria eat the lactose in the milk and turn it into lactic acid and various other things like carbon dioxide. So sometimes the traditional kefir has a slight fizz. And then you strain out the grains, and what's left is some of the nutrients and also some of the live yeast and bacteria still in the milk. To do that on a kind of commercial scale and in a way that is safe and consistent, we had to take a slightly different approach. So we carefully selected the 13 strains that's in our kefir out of basically they're strains that you would find in a traditional kefir grain. And we picked the ones that we considered would give the biggest health benefit. So largely the lactobacillus and bifidobacterium strains. And the aim was to make something that, as I said, was really healthy, found a good balance between something that's quite authentic and also something that's accessible to the sort of Western palate, or British palate. And really importantly, something that is safe. So we've excluded the yeast. And the reason being, we do a range of 3 kefirs at the moment. One is a natural one, and 2 of them are with fruit, so a mango and turmeric, and a coconut and honey. And if there was to be yeast in there with the fruit, then the yeast could actually start fermenting the fruit, which could lead to the bottles blowing up on the shelves or in your fridge, which obviously we don't want. The bacteria we have are basically grown in a commercial space, and then they're frozen to store them, so they're still alive, but dormant. And then we add them to the milk. When they warm up, they get going and start multiplying. And then crucially, we don't pasteurize it because we want to keep the kefir alive and kicking, so full of all those different bacteria.
That's interesting, because I think people do get really confused about this aspect of live versus unsafe. Presumably the milk is pasteurized before you use it, so that's getting rid of anything that you wouldn't want. But then that's what you're saying, that the product that you then produce is not repasteurized.
Absolutely, yeah.
You've obviously described the process. When you were in the process of learning how to do it, did you come up against any issues, or is it a fairly reliable process from beginning to end?
The process is fairly reliable in that it's quite similar to making yogurt, which we obviously knew how to do. What was actually difficult was creating something that had the right taste and the right characteristics. So things like the fermentation temperature and how long you ferment it for are really, really important. And actually the kind of the levels of the different bacteria that go in. For instance, we really wanted to have the fizz that you get in an authentic kefir because we really like it and we think that kefir should be kefir. So we had to kind of fine tune the process in order to achieve that. But we never encountered anything that was unsafe because we were very vigilant in terms of the milk we're using and the different ingredients that we put in. And
also, people have been doing this in considerably less hygienic and less controlled conditions for, as you say, millennia potentially. So it is actually in itself inherently quite a safe process and a really good way of preserving milk in any case. How did you then take this really ancient product and then create the flavours?
It was about picking flavours that we thought married well with the kefir itself. And then the actual development process is very long and tortuous. So, for instance, our mango and turmeric, we wanted to have a really juicy, fresh tasting mango. So we went through loads of different sources of mango to pick the best sort of Alfonso, which is the really juicy one. And then marrying that with some sort of more interesting ingredients. So turmeric, which also has kind of other sort of health benefits, but we think is just a really nice marriage of flavor. And then just putting the right amount in so that you can still taste that it's kefir, but also really enjoy it. Part of our aim was to make kefir accessible to the masses. And we knew that probably some people would just go straight for the natural and not want any fruit in there. But a lot of people that might not have tried it before or might maybe a bit sort of scared about trying it for the first time, we really see those different flavors as an entry and a way to get into it or, get some goodness into your gut without having to have the pure stuff.
Yeah, there's an element of people being nervous about the concept of fizzy milk, for example, is I know from having made it a bit myself at home and trying lots of varieties when I was researching the book, some of the more traditional ones that are imported, say from Poland, for example, you can find them in Polish shops, can really be quite sour. And a bit like tasting anything for the first time, you almost have to have the version that's more familiar and then choose your level of sourness. And with the natural version then, have you designed that as a product for use as a sweet thing or as a savoury thing, or both? What was your plan with that?
Yeah, both, absolutely. So however one would want to drink it, really. So for me personally, I try and have something fermented every day. Obviously, it's quite easy working for a yogurt company. But if it's not yogurt or kefir, then I have sauerkraut and things that I make at home. But with the natural kefir, I like to put it in smoothies. It's great with sort of granola or for breakfast or with overnight oats, but you can definitely use it for savory things as well. So the other day, actually, I made a Caesar salad and made a Caesar dressing with the kefir. So I just added a bit of lemon juice and olive oil and some mustard, and then some Parmesan cheese and an optional anchovy or two, and blitzed it all up with some salt and pepper, and it was honestly delicious with a Caesar salad. So you can absolutely do it for dressings. In terms of cooking, ideally you wouldn't heat it much more than sort of body temperature, just because you wouldn't want to kill the bacteria. But it's not to say you couldn't. You'd still get the other nutritional benefits, but just without the live bacteria. So you could use it in curries and things like that as well.
You can drizzle it over something like a curry or something like that at the end, where potentially you're a bit like with yogurt, you're going to get that nice creaminess, but you're not going to have destroyed all the bacteria in the time that it's just sitting on the top of your curry before you eat it. Or as a warm dressing for something like a pulses salad where those are already warmed up. And with sweet things like fruit, I mean, I've used it quite often on the top of a fruit salad or something like that. Do you have any other thoughts?
Yeah, with fruit, it's absolutely great. And as you say, putting it on top of a curry like a yogurt, so long as it's not overheating, then you absolutely get the benefit from it. But yeah, I mean, also any other ideas that people have or any feedback, we're always open to learning more and to making the product better. So if anyone does have any feedback, then we're always open and loving hearing it.
What has been the response so far?
Really good, actually. Yeah, it's been great. Lots of people absolutely loving the different flavors. Yeah, just really enjoying the fact that they can buy kefir in the shops. I think for some people, they're really happy to make it at home, but some people don't necessarily have the time or they can't be bothered. So the fact that you can buy it in the shops and it's convenient is great. And yeah, no, people are really enjoying it. So it's really gratifying.
The thing about kefir at home, I think, is that it does become a bit of an extra responsibility. I ended up feeling quite attached to my SCOBY and a little bit guilty if I neglected it for any period of time.
Yeah.
I found a little bit the other day in the fridge that I hadn't dealt with, and of course, as you say, that cauliflower shape, it is really quite bizarre, but it does grow the more you use it. So you do find yourself, if you have it, not only using it yourself, but also giving it away to friends and neighbours.
Yeah, absolutely. When I started making it home, when we were developing it, I got it off my mum. I eventually gave up on making it home, seeing as I can get it every day at work, but I passed it on to a friend as well.
So if people in the UK at the moment, because that's where you've got your products, want to try it, where can they find it at the moment?
Yeah, so it's just launched. It's available in big Sainsbury's at the moment, but come July, it will be available in a lot more places. So keep your eyes peeled. Feel free to sign up to our newsletter, or if you follow us on social media, you'll be able to keep up to date with where it's available. And
are you planning any further developments with kefir or any other dairy products, or is that all top secret?
It's a bit secret, but no, we are really kind of backing gut health, and we really believe in kefir. So absolutely watch this space.
Ciaran, thanks very much for joining me. That was fantastic.
Thanks a lot, Kate.
I really enjoyed interviewing Ciaran, and you can find out more about The Collective Dairy by going to their website at thecollectivedairy.com. In our group on Facebook, we've been comparing all our favourite flavours of kefir and talking as well about making our own, which is easy, but you might end up with a bit more kefir than you bargained for, which is why some people choose to buy it. You can find us and the group at facebook.com/groups/The Dirty Diet. And if you have enjoyed the book, or you do enjoy the podcast, it would really mean a lot to me if you could review it, either on amazon.co.uk for the book, or on iTunes for this podcast. That's it for today's Live Happy, Eat Dirty. For free tools and tips to help you live a gloriously imperfect way of life, go to thedirty-diet.com or find us on Facebook/The Dirty Diet. You can also tweet me at Kate Writes Books. And do have a happy and dirty day.